Alright guys, welcome back to Mangastorian. This is the channel where I, Benny, known as the comic historian who reads a lot of comic books, reads through old manga because I'm way behind on certain things and gives you my reactions. Today we're going to be talking about Marineford, which is I believe 550 to 580 of the chapters. It's the big arc, the thing that everyone tells me is the turning point within One Piece, which I find hilarious because you guys said that Arlong was the turning point to make you a One Piece fan, and then you told me it was Alabasta was the turning point to make me a One Piece fan. Then you guys said it was Enies Lobby would make me a One Piece fan, and I've been a One Piece fan since like chapter 50, guys, so I don't know what you're expecting the turnover to be. But also, none of you said Skypiea was gonna do that. Is there no Skypiea love out there? Come on, it's not terrible. Anyway, I'm reading the manga, not watching the anime. I'm writing notes of my favorite moments. If your moment didn't get mentioned, it doesn't mean that I didn't read it. It means that I just didn't take a moment to write a note on it. There you go, usual disclaimer. So let's get into Marineford, the thing that's apparently gonna make me a One Piece fan. And if you're wondering about the hoodie, because everyone did when I did it on our YouTube Shorts on Comicstorian, I got it at San Diego Comic-Con. It was a limited release from a company called Dim Mak, D-I-M space M-A-K. Good luck getting your hands on one. I've actually had it for like 3 months and didn't wear it on the show. Don't know why. All right, so I'm gonna kick this off by letting you know that I had Ace's death spoiled to me by Netflix. If you missed an episode, I explained that when I went on Netflix, it recommended a movie still reeling from Ace's death, Luffy and the crew, so I was like, oh crap, Ace is gonna die in Marineford. Fear not, I completely forgot that was going to happen. And I'll explain why in a minute, because I didn't remember that until Ace died. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Kicking it off at the beginning, this arc is insane. There is so much going on. And when I spoke to Dan, who's watching the anime, he agreed, even in the anime, just so much is happening. Whitebeard's arriving, we get introduced to his entire crew, we have all the warlords there, we have the entire navy there, everyone's just doing insane shows of power. They're like pulling out swords, cutting the ocean in half, freezing the other half of it. Whitebeard can do the tremor fruit and he can cause earthquakes everywhere. It's all insane. And I forgot Luffy wasn't there. So I got like 7 chapters in, and then you have that pivotal scene where Luffy's falling out of the sky, and Kobe's like, I'm gonna catch you, and he's like, don't worry, I'm made of rubber. And my reaction was, oh crap, where the hell's Luffy been? We've had so much going on already, and Luffy hasn't even entered the battlefield yet. I loved that moment that the entire Impel Down crew, though, is behind him, and they're all like, how are we even up here? Oh no, we're not made of rubber. Just a great moment, and Luffy once again caring about all of his friends, but also forgetting they're not him, and his entire focus is getting over there. We move on a little bit, we get to learn a little bit about Ace's backstory, finally, like actually Ace's backstory, that he is the son of Gold Roger, which we knew at this point, or Goldie Roger, however you want it to be said, but we'll get into that in a minute as well. But Ace is the son of Goldie Roger. We discover that he was found, basically, his backstory reminded me of Robin. Everyone wanted this kid dead, no one would accept him, he didn't know if he deserved to live. It had a lot of moments like that, but what made it stand out from Robin for me was the way the two of them handled it. Ace handled it in one way while Robin handled it another. Ace was just trying to murder everyone while Robin was on the run. Plus, Ace also had Garp show up and kind of introduce him to Luffy. The two of them became blood brothers, they cared about each other, and it was a good spot to put this origin, because now I really cared more and more about Ace. I commented in our last video that I wasn't quite sure why we as the readers were supposed to care about Ace. And I didn't mean that in a way of like, Ace is bad and a terrible character. No, Ace is an awesome character, and I wanted to know more about Ace. But from a narrative point of view, we didn't learn about Ace's backstory. We didn't know much about Ace other than he's Luffy's brother. But putting it here with what happens later in Marineford really allowed Marineford to hit well, because it wasn't one of those moments like 100 chapters prior where I kind of maybe half forgot Ace's backstory. It was all fresh in my mind when things happened in Marineford. So moving forward, we get Ace's backstory, we learn all about him, his relationship with Luffy, but it's getting spliced in between all of the insane fighting that is going on. It's just all over the place. Whitebeard is like old, but he doesn't want to appear weak. He's causing all kinds of tremors and issues. In the middle of this, Whitebeard gets betrayed by Marco, which was like, where did this come from? And there was a possibility that Whitebeard was working with the Navy, but nope, that was another red herring because that was just what the Navy told Marco. So it was like, nope, that actually didn't happen. And Whitebeard refused to like punish Marco. All of this is going on while we're learning the backstory of Ace. And during all of this, Luffy is just charging as fast as he can. He also has a moment with Whitebeard during all of this, Luffy, where Whitebeard basically acknowledges him. Everyone else is in shock because Whitebeard's treating Luffy like an equal, and Luffy doesn't care that he's like the greatest pirate to ever live, apparently. Another fun moment during this entire battle sequence, and I might be going a little out of order, but there was so much happening, it's hard to remember. We got Oars or Little Oars Jr. Now, Oars or Little Oars Jr. is quickly referred to as Oars, and on top of that is drawn similar to Oars. Now, I had to Google, was this the same Oars? Because after they called him Little Oars Jr., they just started calling him Oars, and I honestly got a little confused. And I want to take credit for this, but Dan's the one that gave me this reference. I asked him, I'm like, were you also confused by Oars in the anime? Because in the manga, without color and everything, it just looks like Oars, and they call him Oars. And Dan goes, yeah, it's like a beer fest with landfill. And I went, huh? And he's like, yeah, you remember that movie where they killed one of the main characters, Landfill, but then the exact same actor showed up as his brother, and his exact wording was, hey, to make things not as confusing, just call me Landfill? And I'm like, yeah, I feel Oda just wanted to draw Oars again. I think that's exactly what happened. And he was like, I'm just drawing Oars again. I just want to bring Oars. This will be the spot. And we can get rid of Oars again, but I'll bring Oars in. So I found that to be kind of a funny moment. And Dan's reference really fit that moment right there because it really was just Oars and Oars. During this period, Hancock officially announces that she is in love with Luffy through saving him a few times, declaring her love for Luffy. She also has the key to Ace's shackles, which I just found funny. It's like Hancock has just turned into the ultimate MacGuffin. She's in love with Luffy. She can do whatever Luffy needs her to do. And by the way, she has the key, which I found was fun. We also discovered in the middle of this that Kuma is dead, and they didn't go into that. But whoever Vegapunk is turned Kuma into this like super cyborg, and the last time that he went in was the last time he was human. So they established that. And I know there's an arc called Vegapunk, so I'm assuming that this is like foreshadowing whatever's gonna come out of that. I don't know anything about Vegapunk other than Vegapunk's a thing. So everyone's going crazy, and the first big issue we run into is actually Mihawk arrives. And they're all trying to fight Mihawk, and Luffy is not even trying to fight Mihawk, which is out of character for Luffy because Luffy's always trying to fight everyone that gets in his way. It's a question of like, you either let me pass or I'll defeat you. But it just shows how much Ace means to Luffy because he's like, I gotta get away from, I can't stop and fight Mihawk. They're going to kill Ace. So I thought that was a good character development moment for Luffy to see him just bypassing the fight. And Mihawk is just going to town like usual. Whitebeard's going to everyone's fighting and just blowing everything up around. It was so hard to keep track of all the ancillary characters because it was the first 10 chapters was just ancillary characters doing things and going crazy and acknowledging things. Like Ace is Goldie Roger's son. Oh, Luffy is the son of Dragon. The dragons are revolutionary. They've got the blood of the two greatest, the pirates and the revolutionary running through their veins. All of these acknowledgments are coming out. All the characters are fighting. It's going insane. But I had to keep reading because, like, unlike a lot of these chapters where I can do 5 or 6 and take a break, it's just so much happening. You're constantly just turning pages. You just want to know what's going to happen next. Luffy's also throwing his friends at things. I got a note for that there. Like he threw Buggy. Buggy was quite funny during this. He just constantly wanted to get away, but constantly kept getting stuck in the middle of things and constantly was saving people with his weird getting stuck in the middle of things. It's just it's like a repeat running gag, the entire thing, where Buggy's like, I'm not fighting, it's the warlords, and it's Mihawk, I'm getting out of here. Oh no, Buggy just saved an entire boat of people. What? And I love that because like his reason for running made sense. Everyone's afraid of these characters. They're afraid of the warlords. They're afraid of the Navy. They just want to get away. But we're moving on. In my notes here, I have this is the moment where we have the did Whitebeard betray people? It did get me. I was actually going through it and I'm like, did I miss something? Whitebeard betrayed everyone? And I kind of went back a few pages to make sure, but no, after reading ahead, I realized the whole thing was a red herring. But eventually, Whitebeard and his crew make it to the shoreline in their attempts to save Ace. Now, I know it's for the sake of the story, but they were gonna kill Ace, right? And then they're like, we're gonna move Ace's execution up, okay? And the whole thing is broadcast, okay? Why did the Navy not just kill Ace right away? Once Whitebeard, as everyone is there and is being broadcast and they're getting their goals, why did they just kill Ace right there and then? I mean, they already decided they're moving it up. Just do it then. Do it right there. You got it out there. I get a story reason. I mean, if they did it right then it defeats the entire purpose of Marineford. But I just didn't understand the Navy's logic to not kill Ace immediately. Ace is talking to Whitebeard, Whitebeard's talking to Ace, Luffy's yelling at Ace, they're all revealing all this stuff, the cameras are catching everything, and I'm like, okay. Like, just do it. Just kill Ace. He's right there. But I don't know if there was like an offhanded mention why they couldn't speed it up even further, but it just didn't make much sense. But for the sake of the story, and I get this, we needed to have that narrative of trying to save Ace. If you just kill Ace, there's no narrative for trying to save Ace. So anyway, Luffy gets shot by, I don't know the guy's name, but I called him Fancy Man. He's on the Navy. He's one of the Navy generals. He's the guy with the coat, and he's got the cool, like, not cool, but like a mustache, like a Dan-style peach fuzz mustache, and he's got glasses on. Dan's gonna tell me what his name is. I have been informed his name is Admiral Kizaru, not Fancy Man. We're gonna stay with Fancy Man because I like it better. But Luffy gets one shot by Fancy Man. So Ivankov's head gets bigger, which if you remember from my last impressions, I was like, that's the weirdest part about Ivankov. Not the whole Rocky Horror Picture Show motif of the drag queen or the ability to turn men into women, but the fact that his head was huge. Well, it gets even bigger as he's saving Luffy. And he begins to establish he can't do this too many more times. Like, this might be the last time that he can boost all Luffy's hormones and push through the pain. So we get to that. We also, at this point, get Garp involved, because I wrote Garp's involved. I think he showed up earlier, but now he's like, no one's gonna get past me. I will keep this going. Garp's conflict in this was great. I liked it a lot, because Garp, up to this point, was the Navy captain, and even back at Eni's Lobby, was it Eni's Lobby, or Waterford, or there's so many, Water 7? I think it was the end of that whole thing, where Garp shows up and, like, he's like, Luffy, we're cool now, right? And then as he's going away, he's like, the Navy told me to kill you, so here comes cannonballs. So, like, Garp up to this point hasn't really been a threat, but Garp is also dealing with his own inner turmoil because he's the grandfather of Ace and Luffy. Even if not by blood with Ace, he looks at him as his grandson. And he wanted them to join the Navy, but they went pirates. So he's been kind of conflicted this whole time. So I really like what they did with this, where eventually Luffy does make it over there and Garp has to decide what to do. Now, the way it was drawn, I'm just going to finish my thoughts on Garp, and then we'll go back, okay? But the way it was drawn, it looks like Garp whiffed on purpose. Now, maybe the anime showed it differently or not, but the way that I looked at it, him and Luffy were going in for these punches. He was going to stop Luffy, and it looked, the way it was drawn, looked like he missed Luffy on purpose, allowing Luffy to get the hit so that he could be down and not be in the way. That's how I took it. I don't know if the anime portrayed it in a different light or what the situation was, but I like the idea that even at the end, even at this moment, he couldn't bring himself to just kill Ace, and he couldn't bring himself to stop Luffy. He had to get out of the way in his own way. So I liked that a lot. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I read it. Ace is fighting everyone who bashes Gold Roger, which is what he was doing as a kid because he knew it was his dad and he didn't want people to talk bad about his dad. So that was a fun little moment. Luffy has Ivankov push him to the breaking point. I got that down there. So Luffy's hockey is interesting because it's shown up a few times, and the way it's been portrayed so far, it seems like he can shout something and generally everyone has to listen. I don't know. We haven't gone into what it actually does or how it's related to everything, but up until now, everyone's acknowledged that Luffy has this innate power. But what I liked about this moment of him using it is he doesn't shout, stop. Everyone listens to him. They all have to do what he wants. And then it's Ivankov that's like, hey, did you know you have that power? And Luffy's just oblivious to the fact he has that power. And that's when Ivankov is like, okay, now I see why everyone listens and follows this guy. And this power is going to be like the thing that can make, like they start acknowledging that this power is a great thing, because I think, and I might be wrong about this, but wasn't it Rayleigh was the only one who really acknowledged Luffy's innate ability, that there's some kind of behind the scenes power that he has. There might be somebody else that acknowledged it. He's done it a few times at this point, but I feel like that's the only time we got an acknowledgement that what it is. And it's also established at this point, the will of the D. It's the will of the D. What? What is the will of the D? I don't know, and they bring it up, and it's a common mystery, and it's bugging me. Anyway, we then finally get to Luffy versus Garp. What I wrote, I even wrote it in here, Garp missed, exclamation point, question mark, explanation point, question mark, exclamation point, question mark. I was really questioning it with myself, apparently, because again, I'm the only one that can read these notes. Or did he let himself get hit? I'm not sure, but I loved it. And that was all in caps, so I must have really loved it at that moment. And then Luffy gets Ace free, but I love that the key got cut and Mr. 3 had to do the whole wax candle thing again. I was like, oh yeah, he can make keys. Why do we even need a key from Hancock? Oh, just to get Hancock involved, whatever. So Ace gets free. They start running off. Whitebeard establishes that he wants to die here. I don't know if it's at this moment or like in the next panel or two, but he basically loses half his face in the final bout. He establishes that he wants all of his sons to get away, and he's gonna hold the line. And it's just this epic finale for him where half his face gets blown off. I think the ending they tallied out, in the manga they tallied it. It was like 150 sword cuts, 82 bullets, 40 something cannonballs all hit Whitebeard in this period of time. So he just gets annihilated. And he also asks Ace, and I wrote this down because I liked the quote, Ace, were you happy with me as your father? Because at this point, we've established everything with Ace, that he saw Whitebeard as his father, that Whitebeard is his family, that he doesn't want... I loved one of the lines earlier. I didn't mention this, but when Luffy is running at Ace, he begins to shout, I don't want you to save me. I have my own friends and my own adventures. And that was another moment that really made me real... It made this whole scene, to me, gain a different context. Because they're here to save Ace. And I said in the last video, why do we care about Ace? We know he's Luffy's brother, but what is the actual link to Ace for the reader? And we established it better in this arc, but this made me realize the point of Ace, the point of Whitebeard, and the point of why we don't know much about them is the world of One Piece has been expanding without our crew, without the Straw Hats. This really makes you, for me, made me realize Ace and Whitebeard, that could be an entire separate One Piece story of 550 chapters. Ace didn't look for Luffy to show up. Luffy just heard what was going to happen to Ace, but Whitebeard, that whole fleet, all of his friends, all these characters that we just met at Marineford, the Impel Down crew, all of those characters could have had their own 550 chapters, the way that they've all been established and brought into the story at this point. In these little bouts back and forth, I have my own adventures, I have my own family, I have my own friends. This makes me realize, like, yeah, like he's done such a good job of just peppering in what Ace, Whitebeard, and Blackbeard have been doing this whole time. You could just tell a whole story about that. We could just have an entire side arc of what is going on with those characters. And I loved that because it really made me realize what I think I was missing the previous chapters. Luffy just heard what's going on and showed up on the battle. So going back to what I was saying, that Ace, were you happy with me as your father, adds into that because there's a whole father-son dynamic that we know of, but we haven't seen beyond like one or two flashbacks in this entire sequence of Ace joining Whitebeard's crew and stuff like that. So I loved that. I just loved that whole thing. The idea that this world has expanded so far and wide that there are other stories going on. Hey guys, real quick plug-in like a few days later. So going through my notes, I didn't make any notes about a minor plot point, but I feel like someone's gonna say I forgot it. So in the middle of this, Blackbeard like makes a big void and he shows up and takes all of Whitebeard's powers. And now we have the first person with 2 Devil Fruit powers. Didn't seem that important for my notes. I don't know why, because it really is important. To the point of the moment I filmed the video and I'm talking to Kevin about it afterwards, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even talk about Whitebeard and Blackbeard. So for those of you who have been wondering why I haven't really touched on Blackbeard up to this point, I've seen him. I know what's going on. I do know he's important, but at the same time, he hasn't been important. And before you bite my head off, He's the guy in the background that seems like he's going to be a problem later, but they're just making you aware of who he is. That's how I looked at him. The situation was like with Thanos. If you watched the Avengers movies all the way back in Avengers 1, we had Thanos. And Thanos wasn't a threat. Thanos didn't do anything until Infinity War. But he was around. And that's kind of how I looked at Blackbeard. He was around. But I probably should mention the fact that Blackbeard, at the ending of this, took the 2 Devil Fruit powers, making him insanely overpowered. So who knows what's going to happen with that? Well, I'm assuming you guys know what's going to happen with that, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. But I felt like I needed to mention that because it seems kind of important. Like, I probably should have at least a mention of Blackbeard doing that. So this is a little plug-in that we realized wasn't in the video. Thank you, guys. And then I wrote, WTF, Ace just got bodied. And that's pretty much what happened. So at this point, they're getting away, right? They've established Whitebeard's going to stay. Everyone's sad that Whitebeard's going to die. He's dying in this epic way. And I forgot Ace was going to die. It was on the Netflix thing. I started this arc like being like, oh, Ace is going to die. That moment is not going to hit how it's supposed to because that got spoiled for me by Netflix, which is weird that you guys, the community, the people tweeting me, the community on the community tab in the comments, you weren't spoiling things. It was Netflix. I forgot that. So the Admiral who's there, and was it Sengoku? They were out so many names. I think it was Sengoku for this one. I was wrong. It's not Sengoku. Dan, help me out. It's Akai Inu. I just knew him as the lava guy because, like I said, there's so many characters here. And like half of these generals we've seen in one big fight and they disappeared afterwards. And then they introduced more. But okay, it's Akai Inu. Anyway, he establishes that he can end the bloodline of the Revolutionary Dragon and Gold D. Roger at this point. He can end him right now if he just kills him. So he's going in to kill Luffy, who's exhausted from everything. All of the stuff for Ivanko is gone. He's just done. And then Ace gets in the way. And it was established right before this that Ace's fire powers are powerful, but the magma powers are more powerful. And he just punches a hole through Ace's chest. And I was in shock. And I'm so happy I forgot he was going to die because it made that really hit. And I was just like, oh yeah, I knew he wasn't supposed to get out of this. Uh-oh. Like, I didn't know what to expect. Like, it was just a hole and it was just sitting there. And I'm just like, so they lose. Whitebeard's done and Ace is done. Luffy achieved nothing with this. What do we do now? So we go through what I consider to be one of the set, because it just started harping into it, and I believe it was contained in, I'm pulling up my notes. But as Ace is going through his final words, we realize that Garp is furious about this whole thing. He's got one of the Marine guys holding him back to fake not getting involved, because as he put it, he's going to go kill that general. Which kind of solidifies what I thought earlier, that he purposely missed Luffy. Because I think, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Garp could take Luffy. In the live action, they established that he could take Luffy, but in the manga, they've established that he can pretty much take Luffy. So I'm assuming he could probably take Luffy. I don't know if that's actually the case or if Luffy's going to get more power, come back, however it's going to go. But they haven't established if Garp is weak, and he's so high up, I assume he can take Luffy. But anyway, Garp is furious. Jinbei is holding back Luffy. Oh yeah, Jinbei's there. I don't know who the hell that is. He just showed up in the prison with Ace, and he's just been tagging along the whole time. Like, cool. Go Jinbei! Some randoms warlords just on the team. Going back, I still loved when they were like, he's like, yeah, I'm one of the warlords. And they're all like, what? Because they were like, yeah, there's 2 warlords here when it was Hancock and Jinbei. And they're like, well, we know about Hancock. Who's the other warlord? Yeah, I wrote, I'm sorry you didn't get to save me. One of my favorite lines. I'm sorry you didn't get to save me. So many emotions is what I wrote here. But it autocorrected emotions to emoticons. So now I'm just picturing myself reading the chapter and like, smiley face, sad face, cheer face. I don't know why it replaced with that. He then goes deeper into Ace's backstory. And the line, just wanted to know if I should have been born. Again, this reflects a lot of what happened with Robin, but it was just in a different way. Because Robin had the same thing, but her answer was to run from everything and find answers, while Ace's was to fight everybody and become a big pirate. And I love that. He goes into like, he didn't know if he should have been born. He didn't know if anybody would care about him. And his last words were, thank you for loving me. And I was like, what? Like, it hits so hard because these characters in this world are just ignored and sent off to sea, and they're turned into pirates, and they don't have parents. And I mean, we go all the way back to Usopp's dad, Yasopp, is just off doing whatever, doesn't even seem to care about his son. Like, this seems to be a running theme in the whole thing, not about like everyone having some weird love triangle or doing what a lot of my recent animes have decided to do, which I just find weird and have to normally skip that portion, where all the guys want to suddenly play house, where they just get a random kid looking at you, Sword Art Online and Darling in the Franxx. But like, or doing a weird love triangle where all the characters are like in love with one girl. Like, we're not doing any of that in One Piece. And that's what I love. And we're also not doing endless yelling to power up like Dragon Ball. It's got its own place about friendship and adventure and just finding a reason to exist and belong. And Ace's last words just stuck with that exact same theme about adventure and friendship and looking for reason to be here. What is your reason to be on this planet? It's to get the One Piece. Or it's to be loved by your crew and your friends and your family. And that's what I took away from Ace. So we have that sad moment. Luffy's distraught. He's completely out of energy. He's completely beaten up. He can't even move. Jinbei's trying to carry pretty much the lifeless corpse of Luffy out of there, where they're like they can save him. And that's when Trafalgar Law shows up out of nowhere from a submarine. I'm like, okay, remember how I said Hancock's a MacGuffin? Apparently Trafalgar Law's our new one. Because he literally comes out of nowhere to get Luffy out of there with the excuse of it's my destiny to face off with Luffy later, so I'm gonna save him now. Because it turns out Trafalgar Law is a surgeon, which I think they said when he first got introduced, it didn't spark too, I was like, oh, I think that makes sense, yeah. So everyone's trying to escape a Trafalgar Law, but they're also getting stopped. The war isn't over just because Ace is dead and Whitebeard is dead. They're now trying to annihilate everyone. And that's when the what the hell just happened moment comes in. Shanks shows up. Shank hasn't been around in 550 chapters, I don't think. I can't think of another moment Shank showed up other than like, oh, look, he's got a poster. Oh no, he had that scene where he went on Whitebeard's boat and he dropped everyone. I was gonna say, so I know Shank's power is immense. Okay, because he got on the Whitebeard boat and he dropped everyone for like a 2-panel or 3-panel moment. And I did see One Piece Red. That's what got me into this whole journey. And so I've seen Shank's power. But Shank doesn't do anything. Shank just tells everyone to stop or he's going to get involved. Just straight intimidation. Mihawk's like, I'm out. I'm out, bitches. Yo, I agreed to fight everyone else. I ain't touching red-haired Shanks. I'm out. I'm like, oh. Okay, so we're really getting at what is Shank's abilities and what is his power. And then he gets the straw hat and makes sure that it's being sent back to Luffy because he uses Buggy, literally as Buggy puts it, as an errand boy. He's like, Buggy, I've got a map for you. Bring the hat to Luffy. And then Buggy's like, where's the map? And he's like, I don't got a map. Thanks for doing that. And I'm like, yep, that's Buggy's existence at this point. And he just calls it quits. And they all call it quits because red-haired Shank showed up. And he refuses to see Luffy, and I liked his reasoning behind it, although having seen One Piece Red, it doesn't line up, but I mean, I'm assuming the movies, because they're at, I know how anime movies work. They're not in canon, but they're in canon. It's weird. Like, One Piece Red won't be considered canon unless Uda shows up in the story at some point, and she hasn't. So, but he says that he doesn't want to see Luffy until Luffy has achieved what they agreed on. And I'm like, that's sweet. I get the rationale behind that. And apparently Shanks can show up from anywhere and just appear. He's there to save the day. So that's where I'm at. And they tallied up all the numbers, and there's like a whole chapter of tallying up how many deaths happened, what happened, all that kinds of stuff. The death of Ace was really a lot more moving and powerful than I thought it was going to be. They did a really good job. This is what I was talking about at the beginning, of making you, like, at this point, it was like Ace is his brother. That's cool. But this segment, Marineford, really hammered in who Ace is and why Ace is important and what's going on. Like, why he is the core of everything. I knew he was going to start this war, but now I care about Ace on a more personal level because I know what's going on with Ace. And then he gets, well, bodied, as I put into my notes. I do want to comment, because I keep saying, what is the will of the D? There's a huge tease in this where we cut to a scene about Gold Roger laughing that his name is Gold D. Roger, but they're all calling him Gold Roger. And he's explaining to Whitebeard that he'll tell him what the will of the D is and why it's so important. And then we cut away. We cut away from the explanation. I'm like, why? Why are you doing this to me? I want to know what it is. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said at the beginning. This didn't turn me into a One Piece fan. I was already a One Piece fan. I bought this 3 months ago. I'd probably say it was Arlong. Arlong probably solidified the series for me, but I'll go a little bit further and say Alabasta because that's when I cared about Luffy. If you watch the early ones, I was like, Luffy's the only character I don't like. I just don't like Luffy. And it was that one that really solidified it for me. So we are officially, I believe, halfway through this whole thing now. So my goal was to I'm going to do post-war lobby or post-war arc. That's going to be the next video we do. Then I'm going to go finish up my Dragon Ball arc, and then we're going to start splicing in other series into this because I want to make more Mangastorian videos for you guys. So I want to wrap up on Dragon Ball. I am going to start reading Black Clover, but I also remembered another series that I read to about chapter 120, One Punch Man, which is apparently still going, and apparently still really, really good. So I thought it'd be fun to get back into One Punch Man. I did enjoy that one. We're going to do Black Clover. We're going to look at Dragon Ball, but we're going to be splicing in other series again. I've just had a crazy month and a half, as you know, if you've been following all the other social medias. But thank you so much for helping me out today and watching this video and getting to the ending. Don't forget, I'll be back next Friday with the post-war, I think it's called post-war arc, whatever the next arc is. I know it's not that long. It's like post-Ennie's Lobby, but I'm going to come back with that next week. And then we'll be cutting into more Dragon Ball, more Black Clover, and more One Punch, and we'll start splicing it out. Also, my wife is going to be getting on to tell you her opinions of watching the One Piece show. She is right at the beginning of Skypiea. I'm telling her that we need to film already before she watches the entire series. But we're going to be doing that soon. And I also thought it might be funny to go over the fall anime lineup with her and see exactly what looks interesting and what doesn't. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time right here. And if anybody knows the answer, what is the will of the D?